come once again to discuss things.
You ready?
I guess I am.
I'm so sad. Oh well.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Steve_Baxi.
Hello, everyone. I will underscore this episode with a G and an M for Grant Morrison.
Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
Ah, clever.
Right?
1, 2, 3, knock on wood, you owe me a Coke. It's on record. Everyone, Steve owes me a Coke.
There's a joke here about audience, but I won't make it.
Ouch. Ouch. I'm too hurt to go on.
That's okay. Morrison will cheer you up, because that's what he does.
He does that. So anyway, yes, we're talking about just Grant Morrison, and we've talked about him here and there on the show. Like, I know we did one of our early episodes was on every book with the name Arkham on it that was out at the time, and obviously Arkham Asylum, Serious House on Serious Earth was on there, and we talked about that. We did an episode on All-Star Superman a while back, and, you know, obviously that's Grant Morrison. You know, so he's come up on the show a lot, and Milan does a fantastic impression of him, which, you know, it's fun to listen to, but you won't get to hear it because he's not here. And we are all sad and disappointed.
That we are.
Anyway. Now, my favorite thing Milan ever did when impersonating Grant Morrison, or said, rather, when impersonating Grant Morrison was, I'll just take a bunch of drugs and then write it all down and people give me money for it. It's amazing. And it's entirely accurate.
Well, not entirely, but...
I think so.
Well, I mean... he's talked about this quite a bit. He doesn't take, like, dangerous, bad for you, will kill you kind of drugs. He takes as much, whatever it takes to kind of loosen him up and put him in different mindsets. It's not like he's a drug addict or a heroin or cocaine guy.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying. It's just like, the dude's the biggest drug... it's like Grant Morrison was supposed to be around for the '60s drug movement, and for all I know,
yeah.
For all I know, he traveled back in time and started it. But
you know, the thing you missed in Return of Bruce Wayne is that the bullet had trace amounts of Grant Morrison blood, so Grant Morrison perpetuated himself throughout time until he got to the '60s.
Where he was wondering what was up, where was the drug culture, and then he realized that he had to create the drug culture and then go hang out with Doc and get in the DeLorean and all this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Because a little known fact, but the DeLorean is powered by a TARDIS.
Indeed. Someone once said, no one would think Grant Morrison was weird if he just wrote Doctor Who, and I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's undisputable.
It's a crime that there's only like one Grant Morrison Doctor Who story. Like he wrote a comic with the 7th Doctor, I think, or something like that. I'm like, oh, come on, we need more than that.
Well, I know he's expressed interest in trying to write for the show, but he's always taken on multiple projects, so it's rare.
Well, I mean, if Gaiman can write some episodes, why not Morrison?
Gaiman's got more free time than Morrison in a lot of cases. Gaiman doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, I figure, but no. I'm just saying, I would love the shit out of some Grant Morrison Doctor Who, but I don't even know if I want him to write the show, not because he couldn't do it or anything, but he would be limited by what he would be able to do on the show.
Yeah.
And I would really like to read some, you know, comic book Doctor Who Grant Morrison stuff where he just gets to have as many doctors as he wants, show up with as many companions as he wants, and as many enemies as he wants, and all that.
If he was allowed
that'd
to
be
just
so
be the
much fun.
showrunner, then that would be the only way I think he should be doing Doctor Who.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I think he could have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
It would just be fucking awesome to see him write a Doctor crossover episode.
Plus, imagine him writing Captain Jack. I'm just thinking about it. I feel like Captain Jack would be Morrison's window into the world.
True. But anyway, no, that's not where I expected to start the discussion, but there we go.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a good way to get us started here. So besides Doctor Who, like let's see. What do you think your favorite Morrison single story is? Not like a run or an arc or anything, but just like single self-contained thing is.
Well, we should both go ahead and just exclude everything he's done on Batman because that's, I think, the greatest thing ever. But
yeah.
So just excluding his Batman, I think his single best work. When the next 3 issues of Annihilator drop, it's going to be tough, but I think right now it's Animal Man followed right behind Annihilator, or with Annihilator right behind it.
See, and I haven't had a chance to read Animal Man. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. Well, I really like the idea of the speech that he gives or conversation that he has with Animal Man, though. That does sound really fucking cool.
I think his Animal Man might be the most grounded thing he's done. And that sounds insane because we're talking about Animal Man taking drugs and looking at the audience and him talking to Grant Morrison in the universe and the Morrison of the book admitting that he's being written by another Morrison. So it sounds trippy and weird, but it eases you into that really slowly. Like, this is Grant Morrison's first job in American comics, so it's not like he's trying to censor himself, but he's trying to build a following by giving you what you want at first, and then kind of reeling you into his world, which is ultimately the point of the whole story, and it is kind of meta. I don't think it's my favorite work of his because it's easier to understand. I think it's my favorite work because it's got all the trappings of a Grant Morrison story in it. It's got the trippy, drug-based kind of psychedelic artwork. It's got the playing with the obscurity of certain characters. And it's got the fundamental point, which is what Grant Morrison always tries to tell you, which is life is not something you can make an entire sense of, but ultimately the point of comic books and storytelling in general is to dictate life and to learn from it and make it better. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it ends on a very tragic note, and all Grant Morrison does in the book is snaps his fingers, and everything reverses itself and it becomes good again.
That's awesome.
And that's sort of the point, is things can be better at the snap of a finger, whether it's loved ones coming back to life or you just learning a lesson.
Well, like, I remember, I've read the pages of the conversation, and, like, he makes some point to the effect of, like, at first you guys were just fun and cheerful and everything, but then we kept making you darker because we thought it was more interesting. What the hell does that say about us? Darker and more tragic because we decided that's more interesting, but God, what does that make us into? And that was so fascinating. No, Grant Morrison has this amazing ability to, no matter how weird and strange things get, it all makes perfect sense if you just go with it. If you don't question it at first, you just go with it till it ends, then it all works together. Where you get in trouble is when you start questioning it right in the middle of things. But that being said, I think my favorite, like, just single work of Morrison's is still Arkham Asylum. And oddly enough, that's the very first thing of his I ever read. But me being such a big Batman fan, such a big Joker fan, and just such a big Arkham fan, my favorite Batman stories always happen in Arkham Asylum. I just love stuff that takes place in Arkham Asylum because it's its own character in the same way that Gotham's its own character. And Morrison just really works with that perfectly, and there's all this symbolism and stuff, and the fucking crazy art Dave McKean does totally works with the story. It's just a great book. I fucking love it.
Yeah, I do love Arkham Asylum quite a bit. Arkham Asylum and Batman Gothic, in case no one's read his Batman run, you just put those two stories together, and it's pretty much the cliff notes of what he does in his Batman run. And I would always recommend reading them both before you get into that, just so you have an idea of what the template is.
See, I remember I read Gothic once, but I don't know, I didn't like it at the time.
I would go back to it. I just read it recently, and I think it's still very good. The only issue I have with it comes from the fact that the bad guy really is just a prototype for Dr. Hurt. And that's not a problem back when it was first published. It's just a retrospect thing.
Yeah, I've read the Black Case book too, which is
awesome.
You know, it's not something he wrote, but it's interesting to see where Dr. Hurt's origins and everything that he does in his run comes from.
Yeah, it's like getting a peek behind the mind of Morrison sometimes when you get stuff like that.
Yeah, that is really cool. All right, so like I said, my favorite's Arkham Asylum, but what's your least favorite thing? And this can include an entire run that you think Morrison's done.
It's tough to say. I think he's written pretty much everything that I really like. I would say Final Crisis. And that's not because it's bad. I think Final Crisis is brilliant. I think Final Crisis is probably the best DC crisis-y event we've gotten, just because it's brutally honest. The point of Final Crisis is Morrison was told by DC, Mary Marvel is now evil, and Morrison's like, well, fuck you, this doesn't make any sense. Let me write a story that doesn't make any fucking sense to tell you why you don't make any sense. And that's the story. The story is a big fuck you to these events are unnecessary and ridiculous. And let me show you that literally.
See, I don't know if I'd look at it that way.
Well, I mean, that's okay. how he tells it.
I don't know. I think the way he makes Mary Marvel evil makes perfect sense within the context of the story, though.
No, I mean, he does what he can with the premise, but he hates the premise.
I guess I just didn't know enough about what was going on behind the scenes at DC, because to me it just works perfectly in the scene, in the book. It's seamless, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I still think it's very good. I just think it's my least favorite because it's one of the only stories where Morrison didn't get to do what he wanted to do. And so he's making a good story, but he's making it out of the scraps and as an insult to the guys that gave him the story in the first place. So it's when he's the most vindictive, I think. Like, I've never seen Grant Morrison be negative about things, but that's the big one where he is.
I don't know, that's weird, because so much of it is like, so much of Final Crisis really is the hinge point of his Batman run.
Not so much of it. Mostly just the dark side stuff with Batman, and a lot of that information you can just get from the Batman book.
No, but I mean, just like a lot of everything that goes on in Final Crisis leads into how we get to Return of Bruce Wayne and everything. And without Final Crisis, you wouldn't have the prophecy that Dr. Hurt gives. So,
no, that's true, but a lot of that is just like covered with the missing chapter of R.I.P. he wrote and the last right stuff. To where as long as you know Final Crisis is going on, you don't have to read it.
I still really enjoy Final Crisis.
Oh, I do too. It's just it's my least favorite in the sense that it's the one that he likes the least.
I don't know. I guess I never got that sense from it. I just really like I like what he does with Superman in it. And Superman's a character you have to write really well for me to enjoy him.
You don't like Superman?
I mean, he's Superman. You can't not like Superman, but at the same time, I'm not a huge fan, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. I like Superman, but he's not one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. Like, I get very bored with Superman very easily, if that makes sense.
That's fair, yeah.
So, if you're writing him well, then yeah, I'm with you all day, and Morrison obviously does that. And he just does a lot of cool stuff with Superman here that you can see gets picked up in action comics, including Obama's Superman. Which
will get picked up in Multiversity.
Nice. I've I've worked on reading as much of the action run as I could, and I got to the issue with Obama Superman, and that was nice.
That character gets quite a bit to do in the first issue of Multiversity, and we do really kind of get to flesh him out and use him as a talking piece as what the Superman idea is.
Okay.
Which is really cool.
See, I've been, like, I asked the question, I guess I don't know if I have an answer for the question, because I've really enjoyed all of the stuff of his that I've read.
Have you read his Doom Patrol?
No, I have not.
Okay. Doom Patrol is the hardest of anything he's written to enjoy, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Doom Patrol is a bunch of characters that no one else wanted to write and no one else really liked, so Morrison kind of took them and made them misfits and the freaks of the DC universe. And so it's optimistic in its themes and its works and stuff, but its characters are perpetually tragic and kind of downers.
Okay.
So it's hard to have any fun reading it, and it's hard to keep up with some of it. But I still think I'd enjoy it a bit more than Final Crisis, simply because Morrison liked writing that, and you can tell.
Okay, just one last thing on Final Crisis. Something that I think a lot of people, like, every time I go to the comic book store and anyone mentions Final Crisis or Grant Morrison, if the one guy's behind the counter, and I love Chad, he's an awesome dude, but if Chad's behind the counter, he'll fucking roll his eyes and just let out this guttural, ugh. And the reason why is, and I feel bad for him, he had to explain Final Crisis to too many people. And I could understand why that would get old really quickly.
Yeah, because in the end, it's not that complicated.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, like, what the fuck? Where are they at the end? No, Darkseid created a hole in the universe when he died. And like, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I could get why you'd get tired of that. But one thing I really like about the book is it's almost cinematic in how it's put together. Yeah. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of just cutting between scenes, and you just get brief little snippets of scenes the way you would in, say, like a Nolan movie or something. Like there's that scene toward the end where the Green Lanterns are headed to Earth, and you just get little bits of them here and there until they finally show up. And it works because there's this whole time crunch thing going on that's just awesome. And like when Dan Turpin's becoming Darkseid, there's a lot of just cutting back and forth. Oh, that is the bit that and Darkseid's speech about when I hit you, it's with 3 billion fists or whatever. And when I stare at you, it's with 6 billion eyes is one of my favorite Darkseid speeches ever.
Oh, Morrison comes closest to writing Darkseid like Kirby did.
Yeah, I've got to read Kirby's New Gods, because the New Gods are like the one part of the DC universe that I'm familiar with, but I have no idea what the fuck they are. Like, I know of them, but I've just never, like, read their origins and stuff, and I have no idea what the fuck's going on with that every time they show up.
I would recommend it. The Fourth World stuff is awesome. I think Grant Morrison puts it into a nice place for future storytelling, to the point where it's really not necessary to go back.
Well, no, I just want to read it, because, like, I want to know what the hell Kirby was trying to do.
Oh, yeah. If you ever do get a chance to buy those Omnibuy, they are fantastic, and they are worth their weight in gold because of Kirby's art.
See, I always hate to say this because, like, I'm always afraid my head's going to get ripped off by the nearest fanboy. I'm not a huge fan of Jack Kirby's art.
What decade of comics do you read the most?
Now.
Okay, that's why. Kirby art is not so much an acquired taste, but it's the first big progression in comic art, and so everything after it does it better, not because Kirby's bad, but because Kirby kind of made the foundation for it. It's like going back to, I don't know, ancient cell phones or something. Like,
no, I get that.
Cell phones.
I'm not saying it's bad art. I just like,
No, I see
it
you.
doesn't have this wow effect that people seem to talk about. I think I've been kind of spoiled by, modern comic art and everything, which is, God, some of these panels, I'm just sitting here flipping through Final Crisis, some of these panels and spreads and stuff could just be fucking paintings, dude.
Yeah, no,
Just
agreed.
put it up on your goddamn wall.
If you're going back to like Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster era of art, and then you go to Kirby, the effect will be there for you in a way that it can't be now because we've got stuff like Romita Jr. and Frank Quietly and Tony Daniel.
No, Frank Quietly, I need you.
Frank Quietly draws Pax Americana, which is the 4th issue of Multiversity, and it's glorious.
So tell me, what the fuck is going on in Multiversity? I don't get what the premise of that is.
Okay. Long story short, you know that the DC universe is made up of 52 universes.
Yeah.
So there's this group of characters, the Monitors, that are basically the Green Lantern Corps of the multiverse. They go around and they protect.
Yeah. They're in Final Crisis.
Yeah. And they've all died out. There's only one left, and there's some kind of huge crisis going on a specific Earth that's killed all these heroes. It's destroying the laws of physics and such. And so an SOS signal is sent out, and the last hero of that universe gathers heroes from multiple other universes to combat this force. And so every issue you're in a different universe getting there, and there's a perpetuated cursed comic book that works its way through. And you reading the book influences what happens in the way that if you keep reading, the universe gets worse. So if you've read issue 2, then issue 3 has bigger ramifications because everything that happened in issue 2 that you got everywhere, all you've progressed through issue 2 becomes the consequence for another world. It's really kind of meta. It's hard to explain. But once you sit down and read it, like the book talks to you and tells you when to put it down and when to stop and when to continue reading. And it's just really trippy.
Interesting. He is trying to get... It's not postmodernist, but he's getting to this really existential place in comic books that you don't realize he's there until you're, like, in the middle of reading something.
Yes.
Like, to go back to Final Crisis, because it's one of the freshest things in my mind that I got all the way through. And there's all that stuff with the conscious void in Final Crisis, which is just a fascinating idea, and at a certain point I'm not sure if he's doing what you're talking about already, where he's like, oh, well, reading the comic, the void is you. I'm like, what? Am I a character in this comic book now?
I mean, he's been doing this since he wrote Animal Man. Animal Man moving forward, the simple act of you reading the comic is contributing to events and being part of the universe. There's lots of commentary in the 3rd issue of Multiversity about about life and art's relationship to one another, and how one's influence changes the other. And it's like superheroes, if there's no crime to fight, they're going into the art world, and what's that like? And it's hard to explain to people that haven't read Grant Morrison why Grant Morrison's awesome.
Well, like, I tried to do a video about it forever ago, and it just turned into completely incoherent crap. But I think the reason I like Grant Morrison as much as I do is because he seems to have it all figured out. And I don't know whether or not he does, but he at least creates the illusion that he knows exactly what he's talking about all the time. And so you get these scenes in his books, like in one issue of his Justice League, the I think it's American Dreams. The entire league is like knocked out or sleeping in a coma or something like that, and you go scene by scene into their dreams.
Oh yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah, and one scene has Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, like, in the Amazon trying to get, like, they're kind of on an Indiana Jones quest kind of thing. They're trying to get an artifact to stop these Nazis and, like, zombies and stuff. And it's like 2 pages, but in that 2 pages, there's an entire story. It's like I just went to the comic book store, grabbed a random Wonder Woman comic, opened up to the middle of the story, and that's what I read. And then it goes right back to the other story. It's like he built an entire story around just this one scene in a book that we don't even get to read.
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of that. He says very much with his Batman work and his International Club of Heroes that in his mind, these characters have a history. And so every time you see them, they act and talk and work as if they've had past stories that you just haven't seen yet.
Which is why he'd be really good at Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Well, I like that you mentioned this, though, because one of the best things about Grant Morrison is that he is unbreakably optimistic in everything he writes. He's got 2 perpetuating messages throughout every story I've ever read by him. The first being, which is kind of bookending the documentary about him that a publisher did a few years back. And his whole life philosophy being... Huh?
I meant to watch that too. I didn't get the chance. I was sad.
It's really good. The ending of that documentary, he says the conclusion he came to is that life is a terrible, horrible place that will break you down. And so the most rebellious thing that you can ever do is to be happy. And then every comic he ever writes, the end moral of the story is if you can become a bad person by watching sex and violence on TV, then you can become a better person by reading a comic book. And that's what we should strive for in this writing.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, you can never end a Grant Morrison book, a complete story, sad.
Yeah. I mean, Arkham Asylum might be the only exception to that.
But the Arkham Asylum is not even a complete story by itself, though. Arkham Asylum is still part of his Batman collective.
I guess, but I mean, come on, you're talking about 10, 15 years between Arkham Asylum and the rest of his Batman run.
No, I know, but I mean, that story is still foreshadowing and setting in motion pieces of what he would pick up in the next set of Batman. Like, a lot of his Joker stuff begins there.
Well, no, it's not the Joker stuff. As far as my knowledge, he's never touched Two-Face after that.
No, he hasn't. But I mean, the idea of the Joker's super sanity and stuff, a lot of that doesn't get played up until his Batman run at all. None of that's...
No, I got that. I'm just talking about the Two-Face, since that's the last thing we see in Arkham Asylum. Sirius House, I'll say instead.
Yeah.
The last scene with Two-Face, which is, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the last scene of the book. Two-Face goes from being at least on a pathway that you might consider cured to deciding to go back to flipping the coin to make all his decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He has that scene, "Who cares for you? You're just a house of cards," and that certainly has implications outside of the book, which we could talk about if we want.
Yeah.
But that scene itself for Harvey's characters is, I would argue, quite depressing.
Yeah.
Admittedly, he won't piss himself anymore, but it's...
No, I see what you're saying. We 3 ends on kind of a down note, and I don't want to spoil that either, but, how do I talk about that without spoiling it too much? Essentially, that book ends with a character that you've grown to love dying, and it's sad, but the point of it still remains of the trivialities of life being important and cherishing those. And Arkham Asylum ends on a bit of a downer note, but I mean, the interpretation of that book is that Batman conquered demons within his psyche, and that's ultimately a good message.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying, I guess it's a distinction between the message and the events in the story.
Okay, yeah,
right?
That's fair.
Because, once again, Final Crisis. Sorry, I keep doing this, but like I said, it's the most recent thing for me, even though I just read R.I.P. 2 days earlier.
I love R.I.P. I think that's the best individual book in his run.
Me too. It's fantastic. I'm a little pissed off that the way they collected it, the 2 issues with the lump are in R.I.P. and not in Final Crisis, but whatever.
I mean, the whole collection of his run has been annoying as fuck. They just need to release an omnibus.
Yeah, but anyway, So fuck, where was I going? Shit, Steve, god damn it. In Final Crisis, there we go. There's the ending, which I'm not sure if it was you or Alex that was tweeting about it a while ago.
I haven't read it in a little while. It was probably Alex.
Okay, well, someone was talking about how Superman wishing for a happy ending isn't in character with Superman. Because Superman would wish for a happy life for everyone. I'm like, okay, it seems like a nitpick to me, but whatever. But yeah, I think that does add to the thing where it's both a positive message at the end and it's also a positive ending to the story. Right. Though I'm a little confused about... Wait, is the Monitor character at the end of Final Crisis the one that wakes up and he's still a human being and all that stuff? Is he like one of the main characters of Multiversity?
No.
Okay.
He's there for part of it. And I mean, that story's only like half over, so it's hard to say.
All right, and no, it's just because that's I was gonna say it ends pretty happily until you realize he wakes up and he's not with the woman he loves and everything.
Yeah.
And then, as far as I know, Morrison hasn't really touched up on him anymore since. So
well, I mean, part of his stuff is handled in Multiversity, so going forward, it's hard to say what would happen.
Okay.
What? I mean, I think you're doing the smart thing of just reading Multiversity when the whole thing is collected, because it's hard to make any predictions or distinctions about what's going on there.
Well, like, that's the thing with Morrison that I feel like we have to talk about, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face. Morrison reads better in trade.
Yes. Or even if you just have all the issues with you together.
Well, yeah, obviously. No, in that case, then definitely that way, because as we just said, how they collect his shit gets completely fucked.
Yes.
No, Morrison reads so much better in trade, it's ridiculous. You have writers like Jeff Johns whose stuff is written for trade, but ultimately they need to like slightly edit things for the trades. Because I swear to God, if I ever read My Name is Hal Jordan, Green Lantern of Sector 2814 again, I'll fucking burn down a building.
Is it like the Barry Allen, Wally West thing of I'm the fastest man alive at the opening of every issue?
Yes.
Okay, I figured.
Like, you watch Arrow and Flash, you could totally tell where Jeff Johns' fingerprints are.
I mean, Barry was doing that since he came out in the Silver Age. I guess John just likes perpetuating it.
Well, no, I mean, it's that Stan Lee thing of, like, you know, every comic book is somebody's first comic book.
Yeah.
Admittedly, if someone had been following that rule when I read my very first comic book, I probably would have started reading comic books much earlier. The very first comic book I ever read, it's a Spider-Man comic with Venom in it, and of course I got it because, oh shit, Venom's on the cover, so that's cool. And I had no idea what the fuck was going on. So yeah, but no, Morrison clearly writes to be read collectively, as opposed to using the phrase "read in trade," but you know what I mean. It is clearly written to be read as a whole, and that's what makes it so hard when it's coming out month to month, especially if there are delays. You lose the connections, and he does such a good job of subtly setting stuff up throughout that you would catch happening if you were reading it all at once, and you won't catch it if you're reading it week to week. Like, it almost, the only way I could consider reading Morrison not week to week, month to month, the only way I could consider doing that is if maybe like every time a new issue comes out, I read all the issues prior to that first, which would very quickly be a problem. Because suddenly I'm devoting like 2-3 hours to a single comic book. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. There's two spectrums of how to write as far as pacing goes, and it's either you spoon feed not pacing, but just how storytelling works. And one of them is you spoon feed everything to the audience, and the other is you make them just work their way through it by themselves. You don't hold their hand at all. And Morrison straddles that line that specific spectrum of not telling you what's going on very, very thinly. And the part of the reason he reads better in trade is just simply he's really confusing. No matter how much Morrison you read, he's always going to be confusing. He's purposely confusing. He wants you to read issues and have to Google things. Like, that's his intent. And whether or not that's a good or bad thing is debatable. Specifically when you get to like books that are just or films that are confusing just for the sake of it. I don't want to debate about it too much, but I want to throw in like Dark Knight Rises, a movie that's convoluted for no reason. But then you get Morrison stuff and you wonder just how much of that is necessary. And that's ultimately why the trade thing works better, is because the confusion does ultimately make sense. But I think a good criticism of Morrison, probably the only one that I can think of off the top of my head, is if you're writing something like, say, Multiversity or All-Star Superman, and you know you're getting just one story in a single issue, it shouldn't be as confusing and as thin of with material as it is. There's no reason for him to, for lack of better phrasing, to make everything into a giant run.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like he can't write self-contained.
And yeah, he can, and that's the thing.
Like, it happens all the time in his Batman run, and like, one of the things I really like about his action run is all the backups. They're really fucking good.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Like, I love the Zero issue of Superman. Or not Superman, Action Comics. I love his Zero issue of Action Comics, Kid That Stole Superman's Cape.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
fucking beautiful. Like, that's a really great self-contained Grant Morrison story about Superman, and like, you can tell he has a real passion for Superman, which is just brilliant to see. Gotta love Superman written by Grant Morrison. Like, I remember that was the thing, like, before it got confusing for everyone. Not to joke about Cap, but to joke about Cap. I remember when New 52 was first announced and everyone was making their reaction videos and everything to, like, who was on what book when it was coming out and blah, blah, blah. And Cap was like, Grant Morrison's writing Action Comics. That's awesome. After All-Star Superman, I can't wait for it. And then I was watching, like, Comic Vaults, and it's like, if you can follow Grant Morrison's Action Comics, I mean, kudos, because you're a better man than I. Because, like, it's still really good. It's just you kind of lose him along the way. And it doesn't help that the Fifth Dimension characters get involved.
And again, this is a trend. Every time I talk to Cap and he reads another issue of Multiversity, he says this is great. I have no idea what happened, but it's great. And he's right. I mean, like, even now, I think Annihilator is pretty straightforward. But I'm 10 pages into an issue. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just going with it. I'm trying to keep track of panels in my mind. And then by the end, it makes sense again.
Mm-hmm. You gotta love it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, but it's certainly an acquired taste, and it's not traditional writing, and it can become problematic at a point if you don't hook the audience before you make things confusing.
And I think that's the problem that he has big time, is he definitely alienates readers.
Yeah, most definitely.
I remember one time getting in an argument at the toy store about, like, I said something to the effect of, why do they keep giving comic books to the damn artists that can't write? Because I was talking about, fucking Todd McFarlane. And the guy goes, well, name a comic book writer that can actually write really well. I'm like, Grant Morrison? No, fuck you. Final Crisis made no goddamn sense. I'm like, no, it made perfect sense if you fucking read the whole thing. No, fuck that. That was stupid. And then he ripped off Captain America with fucking Batman traveling through time. I'm like, no, but Batman was traveling through time since 2005, goddammit. And I can get into that argument all day, but, like, it really does alienate people when he takes so much time telling a story, because you got to think about it. His Batman run started in 2005, and it ended last month.
Well,
Or no, not last month.
Yeah.
It ended like this year, right?
No, it's been a couple of years, I think.
What? Really?
Yeah. Let me look up the last issue of Batman Incorporated. It was not. It was a while ago.
Oh man, I feel old. I felt like it just ended still for some reason.
I wish it just ended, but
maybe 2013.
it ended in 2013. It ended in July 2013, which is issue 13 of Incorporated Volume 2.
Okay, that makes sense then. No, but it's been this is why I don't know that. It's because I've been so fucking behind on comic books. I like read it fairly recently.
Fair enough.
But yeah, he does alienate the fuck out of people by having these stories that, you know, like we just put it, you know, his Batman run lasted 6-7 years.
Yeah, 2005 to 2013. That's a long ass time to be telling one story.
Right? And I mean, all these other things are a part of it. Final Crisis is a part of the Batman run.
Yeah.
Batman Inc. is only a part of the Batman run. It's not a single book. He jumped over to Detective for a couple issues, didn't he?
He didn't jump on Detective, but he did have that crossover, that Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul thing for a couple issues.
Yeah, there we go. You wanted to know my like least favorite Grant Morrison thing? Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul.
That's fair. Although that was him and Paul Dini together, and neither one of them really wanted to write it. So.
Yeah, I did not like it at all. Only thing I liked about it was Batman getting artificially younger. I always like it when that happens. Because it makes arguing with people easier. It's like, how has he been doing this for 25 years? He'd be like an old man. I'm like, well, there have been several times where he's gotten artificially younger.
Yeah, I mean, on my Batman timeline, he's around like 45-ish when he gets tossed into the Lazarus Pit in that story. So, he's not as preposterously old as people make him out to be.
Yeah, but I mean, how many 45-year-olds do you know that can do, I don't know, pole vaults or whatever?
Well, I mean, how many people in general do you know that are genius detectives and have a body perfect for every sport known to man?
Myself? Duh. So you know one person like that, Steve. Owned.
There's something else.
Little known fact. I am Batman.
I'm not saying I'm Batman, but you'll never see me and Batman in the same place at the same time.
Exactly.
I mean, if you follow multiverse theory, there is a universe where we are Batman.
At the same time.
Yes. And a universe where I am the only Batman.
No, that universe doesn't exist.
Yes, it does.
Nope.
Shut up, it exists.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yes, it does. Yes, it
You're
does.
not Batman.
I am totally.
And you're not even Batman in the other universe. I'm Batman. You're Robin.
No, I am always Batman.
No,
By the
I'm
way,
Batman.
Can we
You're
get Tim
Robin.
Drake as Batman, please?
No. I'm Batman. You're Robin. You're not even like Tim Drake, Robin. You're like Jason Todd, Robin.
Oh, fuck you, dude. That's low. That's like hurting my feelings low.
Oh, here's something we could talk about for a minute since we're on Batman now.
His Batman is the greatest thing.
Like, I know a lot of people really do not like what he did with Jason Todd.
What? He's the only one to ever make that character interesting.
No, see, I disagree with that. I'm of two minds on it. I really like what he did with Jason Todd, but I also liked what they did with Jason Todd when they brought him back in the first place. I thought Under the Red Hood was a really interesting idea, and there was some great stuff for Batman to go through in that. And like I thought it was, I like that they didn't bring Jason Todd back like they bring back every other superhero, where they're the exact same character after that, and they just go back to crime fighting, fuck everyone else. They didn't learn anything by dying.
The problem with
Jason
Todd,
came back.
Because I think we'll get into this a little bit now that we're talking about his version of that character. Regardless of anyone's opinion on Under the Hood / Under the Red Hood, every story thereafter until Morrison got the character was pitched and read and came from the perspective of this is Jason Todd's redemption, and it never
Oh,
happened.
Yeah, I agree with that. That shit was awful.
Yeah, I mean, people were like, Battle for the Cowl is Jason Todd's redemption. So you get redeemed in your colleague's eyes by stabbing your successor in the chest with a batarang. Got it.
That was weird. I did not get like I like him as, you know, Dick's Joker.
Yes.
Which is like that's probably the only reason I really like Battle for the Cowl is just Jason deciding, fuck it, I'm gonna be Batman. And that was it, and it directly leads into what Morrison does with him, and that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you in that sense of him like being redeemed and everything. No, fuck that. That's stupid.
Yeah. Morrison was the only guy to say Jason Todd is not a good person. He's gonna be a villain, and the only reason he gets redeemed slightly in Incorporated is because that's what DC wanted him to do in Incorporated. Incorporated Volume 2 has a lot of issues that just come naturally from DC dictating what's going on. Like ultimately the ending of Incorporated is not anywhere near what Grant Morrison was going to do with that book.
That's sad.
Yeah. It's actually really depressing because that whole last issue is Batman, where Morrison through Batman saying, I love what I did, but unfortunately there's an established system that doesn't let my run mean anything because we have to go back to formula.
That is one thing I think that, like, it is crippling about comic books is you always have to find a way to go back to status quo.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest problem with comic books as an art form is, like, you know, you have, don't get me wrong, there are people that just do, you know, their self-contained stories. That's what Gaiman did, certainly.
Yeah.
And like when they're done with it, it's over, end of story. But, you know, that's great and all, but I want to read good Batman too. I don't want to have to say, okay, we just have to write off superheroes then that are owned by, you know, these big companies. No, I'd like to think that you can still do good stuff with them. I just think we need a way to do resets that don't like contradict or negate the story, but at the same time do allow someone else to come in, because as much as I love Morrison's Batman run, I could be the first to admit that I don't think I'd want to see other people try to write Batman after he'd done it, like continuing on from his point, you know?
See, I disagree with that a little bit, but I see exactly where you're going, and I agree with the point overall. What Morrison wanted to do with Batman ultimately is to just make him less tragic, to make him happier, to make him accept where he's been, and to be a people person. And then forcing people to sit down and write Batman like that, to write a happy Batman, like that'd be fascinating as hell.
But how much good stuff would there be?
I mean, the Batman is a happy Batman. There's a lot of good in that. It's certainly possible to do a Batman that is defined by his tragedy but doesn't let it consume him. And so he's good simply to perpetuate good and not for vengeance. I mean,
yeah,
there's
lose
tons
a lot
to
of
do there.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but then you lose a lot of the stuff that I think attracts people to Batman. Like, once you do that, you can no longer do his villains are just different versions of himself.
Well, no, you can still do that because his villains are now just become not older versions of himself, but he almost can sympathize with them now because, like, just take, for example, say Two-Face. Batman at that point, he doesn't get to mirror Two-Face in the sense that they both have double sides. He gets to mirror Two-Face in the sense that Bruce overcame exactly what Two-Face is dealing with.
Yeah, but the problem with that is you lose the not that Batman would slip, but you lose the danger for Batman of him slipping. You know, it's something that we know won't happen, but it's still something that's interesting drama for the character for himself to deal with.
But the thing is, then Morrison would argue, well, if we know it's not going to happen, then there's no point in having that be a danger.
Well, no, it's a danger for him. You know, he's like the reasoning he always uses is I'd become just like them, and that's, I'm not sure if that's a cliche in comic books at this point or if it's an actual argument, but you need to show why they're afraid of that. And Batman's the, closest character on the edge most of the time. Not saying that this stuff with the happy Batman or a more well-rounded Batman wouldn't be interesting. It could be, but I think you'd lose a lot, and I don't think many writers would be able to do it well.
I think what you're touching on a little bit is, at the end, if Morrison got to do what he wanted, Batman would have become Superman. Because that's kind of where he's going for.
You're not... I don't know if I'd put it quite that way, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of the viability of that premise, it's a progression.
It is. It definitely is.
And that's not something we get very often. And the biggest criticism of the comics industry he gets in Batman Incorporated is that it's a business. Batman's a commercial thing. And at the end of the day, he can't change because change is not built into his company programming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most depressing part.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why I wish we could get more stuff that they could. I wish there was a different way to reset Batman to status quo without, honestly, you know what? He should have just written the rest of his Batman run in old 52 canon and gotten to do whatever the fuck he wanted. So that way, all the Scott Snyder stuff and I can't believe I'm saying this, all the Scott Snyder and what's his name? The guy that was doing Detective for a while.
Tony Daniel?
Yeah, Tony Daniel. All the Scott Snyder and Tony Daniel stuff can just be its own thing. It's its own Batman. I think that would have helped a lot.
That is the most popular argument of we should have just waited until Morrison was done before we rebooted. Because then he could have gotten the ending he wanted. You could have capped off a universe. You could have transitioned into the New 52, and people would have liked it more. And you could have done exactly what you wanted. You would have had more years to plan it.
See, I don't know. It's one of those things. Rip Hunter Rip Hunter Time Vortex or something like that was a book that was coming out.
Oh, I was talking about the Dan Jurgens thing. That was the spin-off of Final Crisis or Return of Bruce Wayne, where they're going around trying to
it was a companion piece to Return of Bruce Wayne. There's really only one point at which the two stories intersect, and it's right in the first issue of Return of Bruce Wayne, but whatever. So, that ends, I think it's 5 issues. That ends with Booster Gold, or maybe it's Rip, the character Rip that it's about, whatever, in a, house outside of time or whatever, and he's got a chalkboard, and he says, "What the hell is this?" And it's got all this writing on it with all these weird things, and among them Captain Cold, good guy, and it's all the weird, crazy shit that was going on in Flashpoint, which I do still like. So I think that, and that came out a good year before New 52 started.
Yeah.
So they were planning something. It's just it doesn't come off that way.
Well, yeah, and Morrison and Jeff Johns were in their prime, were setting up their collective pieces at the same time. And I know both those guys are actually pretty good friends. It would have been so much cooler because Jeff Johns basically runs everything at DC Comics at this point. It would have been so much cooler if they just kind of collaborated a bit more and used Flashpoint and the Return of Bruce Wayne stuff to reboot their universes together. If they showed just a little bit of decency of the stories, because the biggest issue with 52 when it was announced is it was 3 months of whatever you're reading, you don't care anymore, no matter how good it is, because it doesn't matter in 3 months.
Which is actually, that was probably the best 3 months of comics I had for a while, because all of the issues that were coming out, everyone just started writing one-shots, and I love those.
Well, not everybody. Secret Six was just destroyed by the New 52 announcement, not because the issues were bad, but because you realize that this story will never finish. But then Secret Six was re-released this year, so that's something.
No, fair enough. I'm just saying, the books I was reading, at least, everyone just said, fuck it, we'll do one-shots. We'll finish out a story arc real quick and then do one-shots.
I guess I do want to cap off the 52 part of I'm not saying what we're getting with Batman now is bad. I think Scott Snyder's Zero Year is one of the greatest Batman stories ever told, but would have been so much
I'm still on the
cooler if we
fence
didn't
about
have to have Morrison lead into Snyder.
Yeah, that is the biggest problem with like that's the thing we've talked about it where I cannot get past that with Snyder is just I've said it before, I feel like he is diet Grant Morrison, and listening to you and Alex talk about him on that 0 Year podcast you did, which was really good by the way.
Thanks.
Like that almost convinced me, but at the same time I just cannot remove that experience from my mind of reading all of Snyder's stuff and going Court of Owls, this is Batman R.I.P. Death of the Family, this is Batman number 666. Oh, no, not 666.
663.
663, thank you. This is Clown at Midnight. You know...
And, I mean, I had that in spades. Like, I don't like Court of Owls, I don't like Death of the Family, but reading 0 Year and Endgame, going back, those stories actually work just a bit better. Not necessarily Court of Owls. That was a story that needed to be half the length that it was.
That, like, you know, Court of Owls, they fucking made Bruce Wayne have a long-lost evil twin brother.
Which they do nothing with, ever. But, I mean, just to defend Snyder a bit, because I think he's honestly a really good Batman writer, and his 0 Year is just fantastic. But part of what it is he does a lot of meta commentary on what the Batman books are and what Batman is and kind of the generational need for redefinement of that character. Mm-hmm. And the problem and the ultimate praise for Snyder going out of Morrison is he's kind of softly transitioning you into his Batman. You get Court of Owls, which is kind of the generic Batman, greatest detective conspiracy story. You get the stereotypical, well, not completely stereotypical, but you get the benchmark, this is Snyder defining the Batman-Joker relationship, and then you get this is Snyder justifying his Batman origin, and from there he's got a solid character, and he's argued his point and his basis on why this needs to happen. And then going forward, the first 2 issues of Endgame are bloody brilliant. They are fed.
I did like the Justice League fight. That was pretty good. Made more sense than anything in Tower of Babel, as cool as Tower of Babel was.
Yeah, I really like Tower of Babel too, but like, man, Endgame is just so good.
Yeah, Tower of Babel is like, it's so weird because it comes out of Morrison's Justice League. It's the first first story after Morrison's done with his Justice League run. And it really is like the story itself seems like it should have been part of his run, you know. But
yeah, it reads quite a bit like Morrison, and it helps because Mark Waid actually had interluding stories within Morrison's run.
Yeah, but anyway, I think that Scott Snyder's a good writer. It's really hard. Like, I think Scott Snyder's a good writer if you're not a fan of Morrison. Because, like I said, I think he boils down a lot of Morrison's stories, and that's what makes it really interesting. I remember at one point telling a joke when I was really making fun of and just hating on Court of Owls. Kind of, I think a lot of that came from people not liking R.I.P. Like, people talk about Court of Owls like it was gold, and then talked about R.I.P. like it was stupid, and that just like gave me a lot of animosity. So I just kind of hated Court of Owls probably more than I should have.
And that's fair, because it's really annoying to see a run as good as Morrison's get shit on just because people don't take the time to understand it.
Yeah, but like the joke I used with Court of Owls is just like, how many fucking ancient secret societies are there in Gotham? Like, do we have crossover membership? Like, did someone accidentally go to their meeting of the Black Glove wearing their Court of Owls drab?
That's a Robot Chicken sketch.
Oh my god, are you serious?
No, but it needs to be.
Like, it just seems like such a, like, you know, there are all these fucking, and with the Jonah Hex book, there was like the cult of the crime Bible in Old West Gotham. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, how many secret cults are there in big cities? Is this just a thing I don't know about? Like, in New York, are there just fucking secret cults every other bookstore? that like secretly run the city behind everyone's back, and for that matter, if you have secret cults running the city behind everyone's back, how is anyone running the city?
Well, I mean, even reading Batman Eternal, there's even more conspiracy theories going on.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Note for any comic book writers that are going to be writing Batman listening to this, because I'm sure there are so fucking many. For the love of God, stay away from the origin. Like, we get origin stories, and like, you know, Bruce Wayne did this when he was a kid way too often.
Yeah, that's
you know, I think Bruce Wayne would have had to be 21 by the time he finished all the things and met all the people that he did by the time in his childhood. Anyway.
Well, yeah, it's annoying, and I mean, we've gotten a lot of good Batman origin stories, but we just don't need them anymore. We've got Year One, we've got 0 Year, we've got Batman Begins. That's all we need.
Yeah, that's the thing I have with Year One. It's like, not Year One. That's the joke I made with 0 Year. I was like, oh, good. Scott Snyder's finally tired of ripping off Grant Morrison. Now he's gonna go rip off Frank Miller.
I gotta admit though, he does some stuff in 0 Year that's better than Year One, and I really love Year One, but.
I mean, I liked 0 Year. Riddler is what got me through that.
Oh, really? I thought Riddler was the weakest part.
Oh, no, I really liked his character, or the way he wrote Riddler. Riddler is such a character that so many people get wrong, and he did have a really good voice for the character. I don't know how well the plan all stacked together, because I was reading it really far apart, but I really liked his voice for the character. Not necessarily his motivations either, but I really liked his voice for the character.
It's ultimately a story more about Bruce Wayne than it is about any particular villain, so certain things are just means to ends for characterization, and you can't say Frank Miller didn't do that to some extent, and Morrison didn't.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, back to Morrison himself. So, like, we've kind of danced around it a little bit, and we've talked about it a little here and there, but his Batman run, I would feel remiss if we didn't talk about that more in depth just on its own.
Okay, sure. It's the single best Batman run ever. I think we're done there. I mean, there's not much more to say than that.
Well, yeah, certainly. Like, I think for me, R.I.P. has that moment where it's Bruce's diary or whatever as he's escaping the coffin.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
I think that is the single greatest Batman moment ever. And, like, you know, that seems like a silly thing to say, because I'm sure there, like, everyone can think of all their other really cool things that are a lot better than, you know, he got out of being buried alive, whatever. But, like, there's just something about that just works so well for me. Just the idea of Batman thinks of everything, and how logically Morrison tackles the idea that all the human body just breaks down to a mathematical equation of you have 206 bones, X amount of, or 6 vital organs. I really hope I got that right. 6 vital organs, couple thousand miles of blood vessels. All it takes is time to train yourself for everything. And, like, so there, you get the sense of, oh, well, there are only so many ways your bones can break. All I have to do is prepare myself for what to do if every bone breaks, or which bones break. So I have to have a situation in my head. And, you know, it'd certainly be time-consuming and a lot of effort, and be very hard to plan for and be ready for every single one of these things. But Morrison definitely makes the case in that scene that it's possible, because at the end of the day, there's only one human body. And that's just fascinating to me, because the biggest appeal about Batman is that because he's a man, he's every man. And I think that scene shows why it is conceivable that, you know, Batman could be a thing, you know? Like, that's why it's so appealing, is like it could just it maybe could one day be a thing if someone really, really wanted it.
Yeah, I agree. My favorite promo in RIP, and I think RIP is my favorite part of his whole run. I like that, I like Cloud at Midnight a lot too. But my favorite part of all that's actually what comes right after the scene you're talking about, where he's out of the grave and he says Batman and Robin will never die.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty important repeated line in his whole run. And I love that for the simple fact of, well, for the situation you're talking about of maybe Batman's possible. Well, even if he's not, even if you're reading a comic and Batman's in a dangerous situation or he's dead or there's no real Batman in real life, the point is you're reading a Batman comic and it's making you a better person, and that's the point. Batman and Robin will never die in the sense that there's always something fighting against evil and there's always something making you better for it. And I mean, I don't think you can ever be more optimistic than that.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great thing. Batman is, like, I guess that's the thing, is Batman's an optimistic character already.
Yeah.
Just, I don't need him to be, like, Superman level optimistic. Batman's the guy that plans for everything. Batman's the guy that plans for his best friend to stab him in the back. And I like that about him, and I don't need him to be optimistic and super trusting of people. Like, I'm perfectly comfortable with him having Batman Inc. because, he realizes that he has limitations and he needs someone to help him with his mission, and he's always needed someone to help him. But at the same time, I like that he doesn't fully, completely trust every single person that he works with.
Well, importantly, ultimately, Batman Inc. isn't just about the fact that he needs more people to help him out. It's that the fight he's doing isn't reserved for his own tragedy. There's an element of that where he has to move on, and that's kind of what Batman Incorporated symbolizes. That's why I don't think it works when it just kind of breaks down at the end of his run, because New 52 demanded it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when I say, like, he becomes Superman, I don't mean in the sense like he starts trusting people and such. If you've read 52, there's a couple Morrison issues there, and Mark Waid, Greg Rucka, and Morrison got together saying that in the 2000s, everyone's like, Batman's got to be uber realistic, and yet you keep killing all of his characters. Don't you realize what that would do to a real person? Mm-hmm. And so they take him out, they give him the ritual with the 10-eyed men, this tribe of monks, and they allow him to move past all of his tragedy, and he becomes a new man again. He becomes fulfilled because now he's not harboring vengeance, and it's not weighing him down the way it used to. He's not blaming himself for it. And so he's not necessarily the most optimistic person, but he's not trapped anymore. And the biggest trope of Gothic literature is that in a Gothic situation, you are stuck there. You're a perpetuator there. Batman can't leave Gotham. And Morrison's whole point is that, yes, he can. Batman's only limitation is the limitation he set for himself, and his run is to say, we will get rid of that. We're making Batman infinite because everyone needs him, whether or not they're in Gotham.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's I don't know what to say. I always feel like I end up repeating someone else.
With this run, it's kind of easy to do because, I mean, it's essentially a giant story giving you one basic idea.
Yeah, Batman is Batman.
And he's fantastic and awesome at everything.
Yeah, and there's no stopping him.
The only thing that Morrison's run didn't have is Norman Breyfogle drawing Etrigan kissing Batman, because he did that, and that's awesome.
Okay, then.
That's the one moment he's never referenced, and it's hilarious.
All right. So, how'd you feel about Damian's character being created?
I love Damian. Damian gets a lot of crap because he's really annoying, and rightfully so. He is really annoying when he first shows up. But again, that's the point.
Right. Yeah, people don't get that. See, the thing that, like, kind of drives me crazy about Damian, and I'm not sure, like, I haven't been reading anything since he was killed off, really, with that character.
Oh, it's been terrible.
Oh, well, good then. The thing that drives me crazy about Damian is, you've read, what is that, Son of the Demon or whatever it is, when Batman marries Talia and trains the League of Assassins and all that.
Oh, yeah.
So I always thought what was really weird about Damian's creation is we have that graphic novel of, Son of the Demon, and it's this whole thing about where Batman has a child with Talia, and Talia hides the child from him. And then Morrison creates a completely different origin for Damien. And I always thought that was really weird, and I was secretly hoping in the back of my head that somewhere in his run, what we'd get is that Talia did give her and Bruce Wayne's child up for adoption, and that the Damien we knew was like the first clone of that child. And we never got that, and I was so disappointed because I thought I was ahead of Grant Morrison on something.
Well, I didn't want that necessarily.
Well, no, I did, because like he makes this whole big thing about there's only one Batman continuity, and it's like the perfect thing for her to do because they already set up, cloning Damien and everything in that run.
I mean, importantly, he doesn't say there's only one Batman continuity. His whole thing is, what was it called? Was it Hyper Time? Was it?
Well, no, I mean, he doesn't say there's one continuity, but he says, like, there's only ever one Batman. It's just each, like, separate continuity and era is, like, a different time in his life and everything.
Well, no, I mean, he doesn't say that. He says...
I've heard him say that in an interview.
That's weird, because, I mean, his whole point is that there's tons of continuities. There's streams and streams of continuity. But ultimately, the point is you can just pick and choose and draw a line from beginning to end of what you need.
Well, yeah, but no, I guess I'm explaining it poorly then. He did this interview with Kevin Smith, and even if you're not a Kevin Smith fan, you really should listen to the interview, 2-part interview he did with Smith on his podcast.
That's the one where he calls Batman gay, isn't it?
I don't know.
Because I know that got a lot of buzz when he said it on the interview.
I don't remember that. If he did, it might have been as a joke or something. I don't know.
Well, no, he had a serious point about that, but people took it out of context and it ran on a lot of news headlines.
Oh, what the fuck ever. But anyway, no, the way he explained his Batman run is to think about all the different eras of Batman as a different period in his life, where... first he's 20, he's cool, he's just beating the shit out of criminals on the street, and that's all he cares about doing. And then as time goes on, he, gets, a child comes in and things have to get a lot less serious, and he has to, make sure that it's an okay environment to raise a kid in. And then after a while, as the kid's getting older, he's thinking to himself, and he goes through a bit of a midlife crisis. It's like, what the hell am I doing anymore with all this silly shit? I've got to go back to the real world and get serious again. And that's where all the globe-trotting Batman comes in. And then after that, he's like, but I've been ignoring my home, and that's where all the really super gritty Batman comes in. And so that's his idea of how... like the Batman continuities or the Batman changes throughout the era work into a single life for Batman.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. I guess to track that back to Damien though, he mentions in his first appearance that Bruce was drugged and had sex with Talia. That's how Damien is born. But importantly, he mentions that he gets that wrong. And so he just chalks it up to the Superboy Prime punch of timelines not making sense.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that's any consistent with what he said in that interview.
I don't know. I just think that I think that if I ever get the chance to write Damien, that's what I'm gonna do. Is just turn Damien into a clone and have him deal with that. It's like, I thought I was the original. I thought I was the actual son of Batman. And you could get a really good moment where Bruce would be like, "You are my son." That would be,
Well, I like that idea. But ultimately, what Morrison does about Batman having a blind side to family, and how Damien is any more Batman's son than Dick or Jason or Tim is, I think works better if he's actually his son.
Maybe, and like I think,
because I think that if he's a clone, then none of those questions would matter.
Well, no, because he was still raised as if he was Batman's son.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he's not really.
Yeah, and I think that's why it'd be interesting to see Damien deal with it.
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, it's cool if Damien had to deal with that. My only issue is that the point of Damien would be lost in that. The point of Damien being Batman has all of these adopted children. What does he do? What does he do with his real son that's nothing like him?
Well, I mean, he's already dealt with that, though, so now we can do it.
Well, yeah, now we can do it. But I mean, like, if that was the original plan, then it wouldn't have worked, is all.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I was calling Morrison, and shame on me, but still, it would have been. If it had worked out, I would have felt good about myself. So there, Steve.
Fair enough.
Argue against that.
Beating Morrison to the punch is very hard. I've been trying to do it with Multiversity. We'll see what happens there.
I don't know. I think I did it once with Morrison, but I don't even remember anymore.
I kind of called the end of All-Star Superman, but that wasn't necessarily a very confusing book, so...
All-Star Superman's brilliant,
It
but
is.
we've already done a whole episode on that, so that's why I haven't really talked about it much in this.
The only other major Morrison work we haven't mentioned is his Invisibles, if you've read that.
No, not at all. Or his X-Men, for that matter.
Oh, yeah, his X-Men's great, too. I guess talking about his X-Men and his Invisibles would work simultaneously, because his X-Men is essentially his Doom Patrol, but it's less hopeless and depressing for the protagonists. It's still about, like, a metaphor of the comic book culture. It's a lot like Lex Metallo in that way. And then his
Chad,
Invisibles is the same kind of idea. It's not tied down by continuity.
Chad, the clerk at the comic book store I was talking about earlier, he not only doesn't like Grant Morrison because of Final Crisis, but he also doesn't like Grant Morrison because of his X-Men run. And he is completely convinced that it's Scarlet Witch that kills off all the mutants, right?
Yeah, in House of M, I think.
Yeah, he's completely convinced that happened just because they wanted to find a way to erase Grant Morrison's X-Men continuity.
Well, that's not why it happened, because Joss Whedon came next, and Joss Whedon's was a hit, so...
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know, it's weird because, like, what is it? 1% of the population were mutants in Morrison's run or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's why Geneva became a thing, or Genosha. What shit?
Yeah, I think so. Morrison had a lot of, like, 1% of the population, still a really diverse pool of mutants.
Yeah, and, like, I remember hearing him go, well, that's way too fucking many of them. Like, 1% of the population? That's, like, maybe 1 million people? Or no, wait, 10 million people? I used to know this number when I thought I had celiac disease, but I don't know this number anymore. Whatever.
Well, I mean, if we're assuming that we're still talking about 7 billion people on the planet, then 1% of them would be about 70 million.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a pretty good sized population to have a country and stuff, so... I don't know, but
70 million, yeah. That's a gigantic size.
But apparently, yeah, Scarlet Witch kills off all of them. I'm like, well, I mean... Like, I guess I like that more than Morrison having to write himself out of his own run, you know?
Well, I mean, his run was the mutant population was escalating, and then Whedon's run was more of that. He just didn't touch on any of the useless mutants that Morrison introduced. And I don't mean them like bad characters. I mean literally mutants whose mutations have no purpose to them that the X-Men could use.
Yeah.
And then after Whedon did that, I think that's when we got to the whole Ed Brubaker, Scott Lobdell, Matt Fraction, Karen Gillan stuff, and that's where pretty much everything just went to hell, and we got all this confusing Genosha and House of M and stuff like that.
Okay. No, I mean that's all fine. I guess I like the idea of someone just coming in and, you know, saying, well, fuck all of your stuff. And doing something. I don't know how good House of M is, but I find the idea of... Well, no, I just find the idea itself of mutant genocide on a huge scale like that really interesting. Like, it probably could have been done better, I'll admit, but I don't know, I haven't read it.
The best thing to come out of House of M was an Ed Brubaker Captain America one-shot, where he wasn't frozen in ice, and he got to live his life up to 70 or 80 before he died after winning a medal.
well, like, let me try to finish this point though.
Okay, sorry.
No, I think that you've read House of M, I haven't, so
Yeah.
it probably could have been done better. But I think we could both admit the idea of a mass genocide of mutants is in and of itself interesting and could be done well. So I guess I'd prefer something like that to have happened to erase Morrison's effect on the continuity than what we got with the end of Batman Inc., where he had to erase his effect itself, and that kind of tarnished the end of his run.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only
that would seem to be a better way of resetting the continuity, like I was talking about earlier, than what he had to do.
Yeah. The thing with House of M though is I feel like that sort of event should be happening right now, as opposed to back then, because now we're kind of getting to a really confusing, strange place with mutants. And it's good, it's fascinating. It's just like, this is when you introduce genocide.
Fair enough. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. But okay. I think we're about done on Grant Morrison, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think so. Have we mentioned? Is there any work of his that you can think of that we haven't talked about?
I mean, I'm sure there's something that's eluding me, but at the same time, it's like, here's the problem with talking about artists that are still alive. They're still alive. They're still producing shit.
Well, a quick search of his Wikipedia shows the only thing we didn't talk about is his stuff he did over back when he was still in Scotland and England.
Yeah, and I've never read any of it, so.
Zenith is really good.
Okay.
He did some Hellblazer, and his Hellblazer is fantastic.
I was waiting for you to say something else. You're just like, Zenith is really good. I'm like, okay.
Zenith's really good. Aztec is really good. His Hellblazer is really good.
Okay, then.
That's about it.
I have this strange theory that Steve really likes Grant Morrison.
A little bit.
Yeah,
He's there, and I kind of consume some of his work, but it's no big deal.
Pray to it religiously.
No. I mean, what's every 2 hours and before every meal? I mean, that's nothing.
While facing the direction that Grant Morrison happens to be at that time.
Yeah. I mean, what is that? That's not crazy or anything. It's an okay writer.
Yeah, greatest voice of this generation.
Kind of encapsulating everything in existence into a couple pages.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna tell me the secrets of the universe.
Yeah. The usual.
Anyway, all right. So, Steve, what are we? We're gonna do a Christmas commentary, but that's gonna be like a special episode. But what are we gonna be talking about on the next regular episode of Geeky?
We're doing a review this time, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I have my facts straight because I've got one thing set for topic and one for review. I want to talk about another movie. This is far more geek related than Jerry Maguire was.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this is not that out there. It's not out there at all, honestly. I want to talk about one of the Jack Ryan movies, The Hunt for Red October. And I think this is going to be interesting because there's a lot to talk about, because we did a whole episode on politics and such, and this is probably the best way to talk about that. It's a really good place to talk about Sean Connery's career and his impact on the medium. It's a really good place to talk about just spying in fiction, which has taken a huge turn in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be interesting. I was wondering whether it was going to be that one or the remake.
There's a remake?
I'm pretty sure.
Of Hunt for Red October? The 90s movie?
Isn't Chris Hemsworth in it or something? Or
there's a new Jack Ryan movie called Shadow Recruit, but it's not a remake.
Okay, I could have sworn Chris Hemsworth is in something. Oh, I thought of something hilarious, and I was trying to think of how to create a tweet based on it, but I couldn't.
Okay.
So I'm just going to explain the scenario. So you know that really famous line from the Star Trek movie, what does God need with the starship?
Yeah.
I want to create like a meme or something where we just see Chris Evans at the beginning of Star Trek. And I don't know what I want him to be saying, but something, there's potential there. I'm sure you can see it.
Yes.
because he's Thor.
Well, I mean, all I can think of now is '09, where he's Kirk's dad. So,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. What does God need with his starship? I just want to like cut to like that picture and put something on there. I don't know.
Well, it's possible. It's something we could talk about. But anyway, with Hunt for Red October, it's on Netflix right now, and Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, Sum of All Fears are all readily accessible on Netflix or Amazon Prime if anybody wants to watch those.
I gotta cancel my Amazon Prime thing that I signed up for just so I could watch Undisputed 2 and 3. Just little mini rant. How the fuck is Amazon Prime a thing?
It's got some things that Netflix doesn't. For example, Batman the Animated Series.
I guess, but dude, you pay $99 for Amazon Prime every year, and then you still have to pay for some things? Are you high?
Well, you don't use the student version, do you then?
Well, no, but that's the thing is like I can't use the student version because my school doesn't support that. But I'm talking about like how does it exist as a service that people who aren't getting it for free use it?
Well, most people just use it for the free 2-day shipping on every order.
But like I'm talking about the entertainment stuff.
Well, I mean, it's not designed for the entertainment stuff. The entertainment stuff, Amazon Prime just came after Netflix. The whole point of the service to begin with was you pay $90 in a year and you pay no shipping fee for the rest of that year and everything's there in 2 days. Then they just added a video service and a music service to it.
Well, like, honestly, they need to create an independent service because that is fucking highway robbery.
It is a lot of money.
Like, dude, if Blockbuster were still a thing, if I went to Blockbuster and I had to I had to pay them $100 for a membership and then still pay for movies, I would never return movies.
And the only way Prime is even remotely effective with shipping is if you order one thing from Amazon every week.
Right?
Which is ridiculous.
I don't know. It's just crazy. Like, I have no idea how that's a thing that people pay for. Because, like, I didn't know about the shipping side of things. I thought it was strictly an entertainment service.
No.
But even knowing about the shipping side of things, why would anyone do that?
I know lots of people that do it. I don't get it. I do it because I get for $40, and $40 is far more reasonable for a year of free shipping.
Yeah.
Because then, I mean, if it's just $40 and I order, say, one package a month, then in a year I'm only paying $3 in shipping with every package and getting it in 2 days. Yeah.
I haven't bought off Amazon forever. But that's all completely unrelated to Grant Morrison.
Yeah. But yeah.
I just wanted to rant about that for a second. I have no idea how that's a fucking thing. That's like the worst business model I've ever heard of, and I have no idea who is stupid enough to pay for that.
Well, it's weird because Amazon, other than that service, is a really good website for buying things.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, like, I just can't get my head around that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, if you still have your service to Amazon, then you could probably watch the next 2 Jack Ryan movies after that, just for, I don't know, just to see how those compare.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It's just, like, I can't get my head around it. Like, if it were like what the Google Plus thing, and I do like the Google Play thing that's connected to YouTube, though they do need to make some adjustments to it so you can watch the movies on different systems and not just on a computer.
Yeah.
Like, I like that system where, yeah, I'll pay $3 to watch a movie on YouTube. That's fine. If I'm only being charged $3. I don't have to have, like, I don't get a charge to my Google Plus account every month or something for using their service or anything like that, so.
Yeah, that would definitely be annoying.
Yeah.
But I guess to a point, you're kind of being charged with Google Plus if you're using it from a mobile device.
I don't, so.
I mean, well, you've got a cell phone contract, and so that's you being charged for certain features.
No, I strictly call, text, and I just have Wi-Fi on my phone, so I don't use anything unless I'm around a Wi-Fi signal.
But you still have a cell phone contract, no? You still pay a certain amount of money a month for a cell phone service, no?
Well, yeah, but that's
Well, there you go.
just
I mean
phone
that
and
the
text.
cost of using Google Plus and such is factored into that.
No, because it's not a data thing.
You don't have a plan with any data?
No, like I said, I just use Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I'm smart, because the world's getting more and more to the point where you can get a wireless signal anywhere.
This is true, yeah.
By the way, for any business owners, and this is, I guess, semi-possible, if you own a business, just get free Wi-Fi and you will get so much more foot traffic.
And
I don't know how
Wi-Fi,
many...
not that crappy shit that after 3 people it stops working.
Yeah, like, no, but seriously, you'll get so much foot traffic. I don't know how many people will be buying things, but the foot traffic alone, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're a restaurant. Fucking do it. Anyway. I should end this because I'm just in rant mode right now.
Yeah.
Unless you want to hear me rant about things some more, Steve. Do you want to hear me rant about things?
Maybe we'll make an episode just called Rants where we'd rant about things for an hour.
That would actually be quite fun.
I'm not joking about that. I think we should do that. I think we should have an episode where all 3 of us get like 3 rants and we talk about them for an hour.
Well, like, here's the thing. I want to do that, but we'd have to record it at a different time because I want to be able to yell.
We can do that at some point, yeah. I mean, I'm still on break, so...
All right. It's over. This is the end of the episode, everyone. I'm sure you noticed by the little time slider. Anyways, so everyone, thank you for listening. Next week, Hunt for Red October. Because Christmas.
Well, I mean, we're doing a Christmas commentary. I was gonna pick Scrooge, but I figured we would save for Christmas movies for the commentary.
No, that's fine. I just thought that it was funny because we're doing a movie called with the word October in it in December.
Like November Man coming out in August.
Exactly.
That movie was terrible, by the way.
I keep wanting to end the episode, but things keep coming up. Anyway, Hunt for Red October. Everyone, thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Politician.
And we're your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.